Hi guys, welcome to BIM Talk number 9. We are now live simultaneously on Teams and also on YouTube. So hello to everybody all around the world. In each BIM Talk we will be joined by BIM industry professional specialists who will share their experience and knowledge so you can get to know multiple aspects of the world of BIM.
If you have any questions or comments as we go, feel free to write them in the chat, but we will also have a Q&A time at the end. Joining us today, we have Ricardo Farinha, who has all the information on the future superpowers of the construction industry. Over to you, Ricardo.
All right, thank you. So, my name is Ricardo Farinha. I'm originally from Portugal. I've been living in Finland for about 14 years, where 13 of those years I've been working in this construction industry. So my background is in the technology side, and today I'm going to talk a bit about the superpowers that we actually have available to us in the construction industry. So before we go to the actual superpowers, let's talk a bit about the construction industry itself. So the industry, it's a massive industry. So it sells about $10 trillion annually. That's 11% of the world's GDP, and it employs about 7% of the world's working population. So it's a massive industry. And if I try to oversimplify what the construction industry is, so we have different phases in the industry. So we have a planning phase, we have a construction phase, we have a commissioning and operation and maintenance phase. And then in the end of the life cycle, we have the renovation of the asset or then the demolition of the asset. And then it might start again the process. So we at Sweco, we basically operate, even though we have a footprint in most of these parts of the process, we have the bigger footprint is in the planning phase. So Sweco plans and designs the sustainability or the sustainable cities and communities of the future. So we currently are about 17,500 people, and we operate in this subset of the construction industry, which is so-called the architectural and engineering in construction. All right, so about the superpowers, I guess that's the interesting part for today's talk. So I wanted to make it the second slide and tell you already what the superpower is. And it's clearly, in my opinion, the superpower is the technology. So we have, and it's not new, this technology has been around for a long time. It's actually growing exponentially. And if you think about it, for example, IBM predicts that the amount of data, knowledge, and technology in the world is doubling every 13 months. So the amount it's growing like think about the size of the internet. Let's imagine that in 13 months it will double. In 1 year's time, about it doubles again. So it's massive, the amount or the knowledge creation in the world nowadays, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And this is the thing that we have at our disposal. But it's not. I mean, you cannot just use technology. You need to have people that can actually understand the technology and understand the domain knowledge, for example, the construction industry, and they can make a map and connect the two domains and then build these added value processes or tools that then can add value to the existing processes. And that's the thing that I want to bring to this discussion, because I think in this call, there's a lot of students, and I mean, you are our future. So you are the ones that will bring new knowledge to us, to the construction industry, which is one of the least, it's actually the second least digitized in the world. And one of the most dirty ones. So between 40% of the CO2 emissions from the world come from us, and between 25 to 40% of the energy consumption comes from the construction industry. So you have an opportunity to come and help us change the way that this works in this industry, so that we can make a change to the way that these processes work, these processes that have been here very often the same way for decades. So we need these people that have technical skills, technology skills, but also understand the domain knowledge. And that has been what has been missing. And it's not easy. I don't say that it's going to be easy. And I have one picture that basically demonstrates why this is not going to be easy. So like I said, technology is growing exponentially. And if you look at this picture, this shows you the technology landscape for a specific topic, which is data and AI. It's a very small topic, and you see how many companies there are in that field. And all of these small dots here are companies. All of them have their own products. They have their own systems that can connect to each other and work together to then add value to your process. So you need a person or a group of people that can understand both worlds, the construction or the design or the architecture or the actual building of something, and then the technology side, so that they can construct together something that then adds value to the process. And like mentioned before, this is not new. We have had technology, and technology has been growing exponentially for a long time. So we have had these kind of superpowers available to us for a long time. And I put here the level 0. So I define a company or a person that is in a level 0 when it doesn't use any kind of technology to do the design work, for example. So in this case, this is back in the days when people did drawings or 2D drawings using pen and paper. So they did the drawings by hand. They didn't use any software or technology to help them. So this is the level 0. So this is the baseline. Then we have the level 1 companies or people. So in this kind of, this transition from level 0 to level 1 might have been maybe 30 years ago. So this was when these softwares, software that still made 2D drawings, but you could do it in theory faster than by doing it by hand. And you could do projects that were more complicated than you could do when you were doing hand drawings. So there was this CAD software that allowed you to do some 2D drawings. And at this time, back in the day, let's say 30 years ago, there was already software engineers that were creating software to automate that process. So that person that can connect the software or the technology and the domain knowledge, those people have been around for a long time. They have just been, the need for them is now increasing because the technology is also increasing. So a level 2 company or person, it was the time, let's say 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when companies, at least here in the Nordic region of Europe, it has been about 15 years ago, when we started swapping from a 2D world to a 3D world, even though the outcome was still a 2D drawing. And in this time, we were starting, or companies in level 2 started to build this kind of power tools or this kind of automation tools that help the designers or the architects to design these 3D models faster. So you don't build, let's say this is a connection or a tool that allows you to make a connection between a steel column and a steel beam. You don't model this by hand, it's too slow. You have a tool that will help you do that. You put a couple of parameters in the user interface and the tool automatically will insert in the model the detail that is required to make that connection. So that has been, let's say, 10 years of time in my time scale in the companies I've been working. This has taken 10 years time to start building coming from 0 to the maximum or to almost close to the maximum we could go with this technology. But we start having now in the world these level 3 companies. And the level 3 companies, they are companies that are using this level 2 technology, but they start using data as well. So they start, these systems, they are not anymore a static system like these level 2 systems were. A static system means that you code a bunch of lines of code and the system becomes the same forever. These level 3 systems, they are dynamic. So they connect to this huge amount of data sources and they will adapt over time depending on how much data they are connected to. So they will adapt, they will, depending on what you are using it for, they will learn. And this is the big difference between the level 2 and level 3. And as you can see from the curve, just like the technology growth curve is exponentially, the curve from this level, from level 0 to level 3, where we can see that it's also exponentially. So the more to the right you go, the more time you'll save in your design, the bigger the quality of your design will be, and the bigger the opportunities will be to the design companies or for the individual people that are using these technologies. And I don't want to spend a lot of time in this presentation, so I made it shorter because I want to answer questions. But I didn't want to stop here. I wanted to show you a real example. What does it actually mean, a level 3 software or level 3 system? So if we think about a real use case of a level 3 system, so let's think about this picture. So this is a building information model from Helsinki Olympic Stadium. So it's a stadium that has been done, I think, in the 60s or even in the 50s here in Finland. And now in the last, let's say, decade, they wanted to add this roof structure on top of the stadium. So they commissioned Sweco to do this. And let's imagine that I would hire now one of you guys from school, and you will need to start designing this. Of course, you have a team working with you, but you will need to start designing this kind of structure. It's not, it's hard, and we don't want you to do this design by hand. So we don't want you to start making these connections by hand. We want you to use the existing technology that you have available, the technology level tool available that you have. So it's pretty hard to find out from the thousands and thousands of possibilities of these kind of design automation tools what you should be using. And as you can see in this picture, there is, in this case, there's just 3 options, but there's thousands more options. And how does it work in a level 2 company to find this knowledge or to share this knowledge? You will ask the person next to you. So you might ask a design manager, or you might ask your colleague. In this case, we have 1,200 people in Sweco doing this type of design in this software. So you have 1,200 people you could ask from. But imagine, these people, these 1,200 people in 2020 at Sweco, they have used 10,000 of these unique tools. In this 2020, they've inserted 17 million of these tools in the projects. And from these 17 million times we have captured, it means that they have changed 1.2 billion attributes in those tools. So it's massive. So the knowledge here is huge. So how do I even know who to contact from this pool of people to get information about how to use, what tools to use, or how do I detail this column? How do I do reinforcement in this wall? So if you are not lucky to have a company that has a lot of good manuals describing how to do, or if you have not worked in this business for a long time, it's pretty hard to get this kind of knowledge.
Ricardo, so, could you be a bit more clear in this part here, where you described the numbers, because it was a bit confusing. Can you clarify a little bit there?
Which numbers? So we have 1,200 people that are using the software, structures. And these people, these 1,200 people during 2020, they have used 10,000 of these parametric tools in the models.
All right.
And these 10,000 tools, they have been inserted 17 million times in the projects. So let's say I have a column in the beam, I put a connection between them, that's one time. I have another one, another time. 17 million times they have done this.
17 million times?
Yes.
All right.
And the next slide is also good for explaining this a bit better. So as you can imagine, like I mentioned, a level 3 company or a level 3 system uses data to basically use to try to find the added value in the data and then give that information back to the user. And that's what we did. So as you can imagine, the first thing we need is a data mining system. So we have a data mining system that how it works is that every time you do some small change to the project, let's say in the Olympic Stadium, everything is collected. Or let's say in the previous 50 stadiums you have done before, we are collecting all the single things you are doing. So this system is actually, in 2020, we have collected data from 18,000 projects. And these data miners have been active in this 1 year, they have been active for a total of 900 years. So they have been active every day for 900 years, collecting data from like 2,000 people or 1,200 people. So that's the data mining side. Then you need to have the level 3 system needs to be able to process this data. It's not enough to just collect data. Data by itself might be irrelevant if you don't process it and get added value. So you'll need to have a system. In this case, in this specific example, it's a machine learning system that can process the information and then extract, squeeze the added value from it. So in this case, what machine learning is doing, it's actually grouping the users together. So it looks at everything that's happened now, it's happening now, and it has happened in the past, and then it will group our people together. So let's say that in this month, I'm working in a timber project, for example, a school timber project. I'll be grouped together with people that are doing similar work than I'm doing, and that are using similar tools that I'm doing. Let's say this green cluster here in the bottom. Next month, I change my type of work. I will go and work in a boiler building project, for example. Then I'll be grouped together with the people that work on boiler building projects. So now we have a system, we have a level 3 system that can start looking at the data and make it sense out of the data. So that's the next step. And then the last step is that you need to have the process or the way to then show that data to the user so that it adds value. And this is example of the end result of that data that we are transforming and processing. If I come here, I log into the system, it shows me that there is 4 people that are similar to me. From these 4 people, 2 of them are from Finland, 1 of them is from Sweden, 1 of them is from Norway, and then it shows me these kind of parametric tools that they have been using that I have never used before. So I'm not interested in the 10,000 tools that people have been using. I'm interested now in the 41 tools that are relevant to my work. And this is the power of these systems. The data is so enormous that we need to have these automatic systems that can cluster and filter the information so that you are not bombarded with the information and data. No one will ever go and see 10,000 tools and what they do, but they might go and see what 41 tools do if I'm doing, in this case, some kind of steel detailing project.
And so the idea here is that you are grouping persons according to what the tools they are using at the moment. So they know which persons are using at the moment. You can talk to them. What's the...
Yeah, the machine will look at what's happening, what is happening now in this week, for example, and what has happened in the past, and is using that information to make a model of how the people should be grouped together. That's the machine learning side. And then this side is just showing the machine learning results and showing to people what the machine learning, how they were grouped together. But this is just one step. We could go even one step further. That, for example, if the machine can also understand what kind of design I'm doing. So if I'm in that Olympic stadium and I'm doing a connection between two steel beams, for example, the machine can understand that I'm trying to detail that kind of connection. And in this case, it would further filter the data. So in these 4 connections, so from 41 connections, we could filter it to 4 connections and show that information to the user. And this is just one example from the many that we have been working on. But this basically, I try to show you the idea here is to basically tell you that this new level of superpowers, let's say it like that, is that we need to be able, or the tools or the systems need to be able to connect to this huge amount of data and capture the domain knowledge. They need to be able to process that data and convert it into actionable insights. And then in the end, they need to be able to target that huge amount of insights to the right person at the right time. So if I'm doing fire design, for example, I'm not going to be interested in information about a bridge detailing, for example. I'm interested in things related to fire design. And if I'm doing a connection between a foundation and the piles, for example, I'm not interested in how the reinforcement goes around the door or a window. So all of this, the machines in these level 3 systems are starting to understand what's happening. They are starting to become aware, and they are then starting to filter that information and send that to the user and helping him and giving him superpowers to then improve the way that they do design. And that's, I think, the superpowers that are currently starting to be available to companies like Sweco, for example. There's many others doing it. So the technology is the superpower, and this is not simple. So we need you guys to study also technology. Don't only study like civil engineering and architecture. Dedicate a bit of your time to study technology and software engineering, for example, and come and help us make this leap from level 2 to level 3, or even from level 1 to 2. We need people with technology skills to come and reshape the way that the industry is working. And lastly, I would like to also tell you that there is going to be a conference in exactly 2 weeks' time where there is going to be 50 presentations related to these topics.
All right. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Really good. Kimberly,
Yes.
do you have any questions?
I do actually. How common is it that you would see this level 3 system in use in the industry right now at the moment? Sorry for the echo. I think YouTube has an echo.
I think there is plenty of companies already using these level 3 systems. So like mentioned, this conference is a good place to see a lot of real examples of level 3 systems being used in production.
That's awesome.
So for example, I can give you the example of Sweco. We have started this kind of like migrating from the level 2 to the level 3, maybe in 3 years ago, 2018, we started learning and studying and creating knowledge inside the company and slowly making a roadmap of where we want to go and how fast. So this is a journey that we are in at the moment. It's not going to be in 1 year you get things done. Like those 4 steps that you see there, let's say it takes a decade to go from step number 1 to step number 2 and so on. Of course, nowadays, because technology is growing exponentially, you have the potential to decrease those gaps. It doesn't need to be a decade anymore. It can be much quicker. If the company is ready to invest and start developing it, you can do it much faster than a decade. But it has been in the past a decade. So I've been, like mentioned, maybe I can put that slide on. So when I joined this field 14 years ago, it was actually, 1 second, I think this slide is good to keep.
Some questions in the chat after this.
So when I joined, it was here between the, let me put a pointer. So I joined in 2008, this industry, and we were here in Finland, in the Nordic region of Europe. We were here jumping between this level 1 to level 2. So my first job was to start building this automation on the level 2, make sure that the company I was working for had automation, level 2 automation. And that's the job that I then continued here at Sweco. And now 3 years ago, we started the journey in Sweco to jump to this level 3.
Wow, that's a lot in 3 years.
Yeah.
We have some questions in the chat for you after this.
Okay, let me check the chat.
Yeah.
Your treatment of building is still very passive. How do you address digital twin and getting buildings giving feedback for its life cycle? Well, there is a lot of digital twin platforms around, and there is a lot of projects at Sweco that are trying to push this technology forward. But like digital twin, I mean, there is, like I know a couple of projects that we are using platforms like Autodesk or Bentley platforms or other smaller companies where we try to use these technologies to then smooth the transition between the planning and construction and maintenance phase, and it could then be used, those assets, those 3D models or building information models could be used throughout the full life cycle of the building or the asset. But I still think it's quite early phase, but there is companies already using things like that. And of course, I mean, Sweco is quite a big company, so I know some projects that use it, but not all of them are using the technology yet. Maybe there is something I don't know about in some corner of Sweco. Second question, Sweco also uses level 3 data insights to track user productivity and errors. Well, we don't track users, so that was one of the things that we decided in these first years, that we are not going to be, like the tracking stops in the business unit level. So we don't have any user information there. So we want to understand how the process works, not how the people works. And we want to understand the patterns on the process so that we can then help the users to change the process maybe in an automatic way. So I mean, we have clear rules how this processing can be done so that we are following GDPR law and we are following the Sweco data privacy guidelines. So that was one of the first things we started. So when you start on this journey from level 2 to level 3, you need to define this kind of guidelines. Where do you want to go? How fast you want to go? So you need to have a roadmap for that. And that was done in the second year. We already defined this kind of things inside Sweco here in Finland.
So are you using this as a teaching on demand tool?
In this specific use case, yes, but there is other use cases that we use to create awareness in the project, or to, for example, get access to information that in the past you couldn't get access. So there is, like, I only show you one example. We have done, let's say in the last year and a half, we have done between 15 to 20 of these kind of smaller kind of examples. So, and the examples, they all vary a lot on the topic. So in this case, it's for decreasing the time it takes to adopt new technologies. because I showed you a number, 10,000 tools were used in 2020, but there is way more out there. So can we somehow, there might be 10 times more tools available for us at Sweco from different providers that we don't use because it's hard to get them to the business. So tools like these will help us to decrease the time it takes to adopt this new technology, this technology from level 2. And so we are using technology of level 3 technology to then decrease the time it takes to start using level 2 technology. That's the use case I showed you today. But there is other use cases. There was a question, would you say that there is a level 4 on the horizons, or is level 3 the highest level right now that everyone is developing or upgrading? Well, remember, these levels, they are not an official definition. This is my view of things, but maybe the level 4 could be, I mean, a way more automation. So the automation would be way bigger than it is at the moment. So you would have the humans do like checks on the work that the machine could create. But again, this is still quite science fiction, but there are people and there are companies working on things like this. So that could be maybe the level 4. So we will see the shift of the engineering and architectural job to be something that we don't yet have. So the machine could help so much on these repetitive tasks that.
So my follow-up question on that is, where do you see ourselves in the future, right? And will it be possible to solve complex problems, or just simple tasks as printing or?
Well, I think there is a potential to go to complex tasks. The situation at the moment we are with AI is that AI is very good at solving small tasks, very specific problems. AI is very good at solving. So it might be in the future that the AI could be solving more complex problems, but as of now, at least the problems I've seen, they are very specific. And then you don't build one AI that solves everything. You build multiple small things that then solve that single specific small problem. Like in this case, we have a simple AI, simple machine learning algorithm. Actually, it's not that simple, but anyways, that solves a very specific problem. We want to group the people by the type of project they work on, by the type of design they do. If they do foundations, we don't want to group the people that do foundations with the people that do walls and doors and the roof. We want to group them together. So AI is good for that. There's a massive amount of information, and the AI can see the data from 1.2 billion data points and find the relationship and the correlation between those data points, and then give you an output if you ask the right questions. So I see in the next decade, these kind of things will appear more and more in the industry. So we will have these kind of tools that can process this massive amount of information that might exist, or people might not even collect it yet. There is a lot of data that could be valuable that is not collected, but there is also a lot of valuable data that we have collected already. Just look at our building information model. There's so much data and information inside that we often just do once and then forget. It's like create and forget. So we could somehow reuse that information to then, like if you have 20 hospital projects you have done before in a BIM format, and you have the history of how it was done and what was the problems it happened and the good things that it happened, why don't we reuse that information in the new project that comes in the future? So this is already possible with the current data we have. But yep.
We have a question on YouTube now. It says, great talk, Ricardo. What do you think about AI-based tech to track installation quality? Typically, BIM and surveyor data are compared to report deviations above a threshold, and that's from Felipe Gaspar.
Well, I think there is companies trying to use AI to improve that kind of thing. I have not worked directly with these kind of problems, but there is a potential for that. So there is a potential to use a machine to try to decrease those errors. And there are companies that, for example, are using machine vision in the construction site. So there's a camera or something flying around that takes a video feed, and then they compare that video feed with the BIM model, and then tries to calculate automatically if there's something wrong so that it decreases those errors in the site. So there are companies working on things like this. So we start seeing more and more of these tools using these kind of advanced analysis methods to do these things.
A question here from Pedro. What if the software has a closed API?
Well, often I don't see that many softwares actually with a closed API anymore. That's one of the things that, at least when I go to a meeting, it's the first question I ask. Do you have an open API? Because nowadays, and to be successful, to jump between a level 2 and a level 3, you need to have an API to access the information. Without that, it's like you said, it's a closed system. You can't use it. So I think the companies or the software companies have realized that. They've realized that maybe 5 years ago even, and they don't anymore do these kind of closed systems because that will damage their business in the future. So I think software companies have already realized that, and we don't see that many closed systems anymore.
The question in the chat on Teams. Just come up there. Should the educations make a shift in their way of teaching and teach more about level 3, prepare for the new generation of level 4, or do we still need to know stuff, how to do level 1 stuff? And that's from Julius.
I think you will always need to know the level 1 stuff. I mean, in school, you'll learn all the levels, I would say. But at the moment, maybe the school doesn't teach the level 3 at all. So maybe the school focus more on level 0 and 1, and maybe a bit on level 2. Maybe in the future, it could also have a course or 2 on level 3 as well. But I mean, remember, if you go to the computer science department, they do talk about this technology already for a long time. I mean, so you don't need to even start inventing something. You can go to the computer science department and ask them, how do I get from level 2 to level 3? Or take some courses from their side. So the issue with the computer science department is that they are missing the domain knowledge that you guys have. You know what is a load-bearing wall. You know that. But the computer science guy doesn't know that. He doesn't know why he cannot make a hole on that load-bearing wall. And that's the key here. We need to have these people that understand the domain knowledge and the technology, or at least they can be separate people, but they need to be able to talk the same language. Often they don't talk the same language. It's very hard to put a computer science guy with a civil engineer or an architect. After 10 minutes, they have already misunderstood each other.
They don't speak the same language.
Yes.
We have actually a question following up that. Julius said he participated as well in the AEC hackathon in Copenhagen, where we met actually. And he also was involved in Digital Twin for Everyone, the project that we've been involved in. He's asking if you think the education should move towards machine learning, Power BI, Forge. What's your take into it? Because
I don't think the education itself, all of it should be just moved completely to the technology side. But like mentioned, I think parts of the education should also focus on that part. So, like I've been in this industry for 14 years, and it's really hard to hire people, technology people like myself that want to work for us. Like if I give you the example in Portugal, back in the day when I was studying, my parents used to say, if you don't study enough, you are going to work in construction. I mean, that's the feeling that people had back in the day. The bad guys will go to construction. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have an entire a group of people that they're allergic to construction. They think only the dummies go to the construction, and that's not true.
The concrete dust.
Yes. I mean, think about it. We are talking about, climate change is real. Let's change the topic now a bit. And I didn't mention much. I usually have a slide about it, but I didn't show it this time. But I think this is very relevant to say in a meeting like this, because you guys are the future. You are studying, and you are the ones that will have the biggest impact in 10, 20 years. Climate change is real. So don't believe people that say it's not. And the construction industry is one of the places where you can have the biggest impact to make a change on that. So, and you are not going to make a change on that with methods that were used in the last 20, 30 years. They don't work anymore for this. We are building too quickly, too much. So we need to change the way that we design, the way that we build, so that we can accommodate as many people in one planet. And technology, I believe that it's one of the things that will help us on that. It will help us to decrease the time it takes to make multiple choices on a building, for example. Instead of designing only one power plant, you can design 10 for the time you design one. And then you can optimize the power plant by the material or some other things. So this kind of more advanced design could be achieved if we start going to this level 3 and level 4 type of things. And there is, like mentioned, many companies and a lot of universities. I'm pretty sure that they're in Denmark. Your guys in DTU are doing this kind of research already. That how do we get there? How long it's going to take? What do we need to focus first? There's a lot of intelligent people around already thinking of this, and that at least to me makes me see the light in the end of the tunnel. So I'm confident that you guys that will come now and later from the university, you'll start to hear about these things. I mean, we met already 1 year ago when we were there in a hackathon in Denmark. You already heard about these kind of things. So you have been in school at that time, most of you, and you already heard about these kind of things. And that's good. We start seeing the people in school to hear about the potential of the future and getting excited. I mean, I was really surprised in Denmark how many students there was in that technology hackathon from our construction industry.
It is becoming such a big thing now. That's why it's so important that we get the word out about this kind of data management.
We are programming to have our internal hackathon together with, because at KEA we have the two faculties. We have construction and we also have digital, right? We are planning to join forces there. As you said, it's going to be a bit confusing talking to each other, but we are planning actually a hackathon for November this year, hopefully after this.
I think that's a very good way to, for example, to start creating knowledge with the students. Like they have a 2-day time that they need to really focus on one problem and then think outside of the box. Because that's the kind of people we need. We need people that are not just going to a manual and just, okay, what I need to do is that just read the manual and press the same button. We need also these kind of people that can think outside of the box and question themselves. Can it be done in another way? Can we somehow use that thing I learned from this forum and apply it in this project? So, of course, not everyone will have this kind of curiosity mind, but we need more people like that in the industry. That's the feeling I have.
So, like summing things up, how do you predict the growth of this kind of methodology is going to go in the future? Do you think it's going to keep going this way? Like it seems like a big learning curve since you've been involved.
That's hard to predict even for a technology person like me.
But you said like in the last 3 years it's shot up from level 3 to level 4 and it doesn't seem to be stopping with
I don't
the
think
technology.
So. My feeling is that at least I will be in the level 3 for, I don't know, 7 more years. So I started 3 years ago trying to change the things from level 2 to level 3. Maybe it takes a decade, maybe not to go to the top of the level 3, but to reach way like 70% of the level 3 potential. A decade, let's say like that, with the current resources.
Can you see the question from Tiago, Pedro?
Let's see.
Let's get some last
Tiago,
questions in
good
before we
remark,
start
Ricardo. What do you think should be the approach to change the mindset regarding technology in the construction industry in Portugal? I found that one of the hardest blockers right now. Tiago, first remember that I have not been in Portugal for 14 years. And what I mentioned about Portugal, the way of thinking of Portugal was 35 years ago when I started school. So a lot has changed in Portugal. And I actually have been in some conferences a couple of years back in Portugal. And I was surprised with some young people and how they wanted to learn about this technology. And I even talk to people there in the Porto University that were already doing quite advanced technology-related automation. So, but the mindset, so if we go back to your question, this, let's say, being allergic to technology, because that's what I feel sometimes that people in the construction industry are. I mean, It's not just in Portugal. I see that even here in the Northern Europe, it has been changing a bit, but there is still a lot of people that I feel that are allergic to this thing. And it's also, the construction industry is a very difficult industry because it's so siloed. Like if you think about the process, like you start with the architect and you go to the civil engineer, then you have the MEP designer and the HVAC and the electrical, all of these work kind of separate. even though we have digital twins and we have platforms to share information, a lot of these processes are still independent in silos. So the communication between them is not perfect yet. So it makes it hard to then try to automate and improve and things like that because of these many silos. And also the construction industry between countries might be so different, and the countries are so protected, they're local. They only do business with the local company. You cannot go there and make a project there if you don't have a local presence. So it's like there's a lot of things that will allow us to change this way of thinking, this mindset. I mean, the way that we have been doing, or that I've been doing, is trying to show success stories, like in this, came here to talk to you guys and show you a real example of what could be done. Like mentioned before, this project started in a hackathon last year. We spent 2 days to build the first prototype of this. I mean, it doesn't need to be expensive or time consuming to build something like this. So, and that's been the approach, to kind of show by experience and by showing real use cases in conferences and in writing articles about it in the news. That has been at least my way of going forward and changing the mindset of the people. Okay. Can you give an example of how to collect data about users and their skills, for example?
So this will be the last question, then we'll start saying goodbye, if that's okay?
Well, I think there is so many ways to collect data, and there is so many ways to then compute this kind of a grading system. But like mentioned, we don't do that. We don't try to compute any grades for any users. So what we are interested is understanding the process. How do we design an hospital? How do we connect a column to a footing? And how do we put the piles in the footing? And what are the options of the reinforcement inside the footing? And what is then the difference between this project and the 100 projects we have done in the past? Can we find a relationship there that will allow us to speed up the design process? That's the key of what I am working with. Of course, there might be other people focusing on this kind of collecting data from the users and trying to measure their skills, but at least that has not been the focus for me and my teams.
I remember that we have a question, just to finalize here. We had a question before. Are you working with other companies collecting data, or is just Sweco? Is there a platform to share data, to share this raw data?
There is a lot of companies providing this kind of places or platforms to share data. This example I gave you today, these 900 years of data, or these data miners that were active for 900 years. So that data miners are only inside Sweco. We don't share that information with anyone. So that's basically, let's say, we are capturing the way that the Sweco designing community is doing design inside Sweco. But there is other data sets that are publicly available out there. For example, we have connected data from this design process with CO2 emission data, and then try to find the patterns how we could decrease the CO2 footprint on a project. I mean, that data from the CO2 is publicly available to everyone in multiple data sources. And that's just one example. There's many other places where you can find data if you know what to look for.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Nohat is asking here. Ricardo, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was great to have you here. We had lots of questions. You really sparked some fire here. And do you have anything to add?
No, if you do have more questions for Ricardo, just catch him on LinkedIn. I'm sure he won't mind.
Yes.
I think it was in there.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you
very much.
And have a nice day, guys.